Now, tonight's show is interesting. I love when we can look, on so many of the shows, Tim, we're looking all across the globe to all of these weird stories that are happening, and it always seems to be some other place.
Oh, yeah.
It's always some exotic location. Well, there's a lot of secrets and a lot of mystery that takes place right in our own backyard. And joining us tonight is Josh Reeves. He is a Dallas, Texas-based researcher, filmmaker, and a radio talk show host. Funded solely by his internet followers, Josh is on a personal quest to uncover the true ancient history and forgotten past of the Americas and the world. Josh has been broadcasting his internet radio show, The Global Reality, for nearly 6 years, and he brings a lifetime of independent research to the table. Investigations in this film include the ancient and mysterious rock wall of Rockwall, Texas, a 20-mile site buried underground that could be one of the oldest civilizations on Earth, Tim. Did you hear me? On Earth.
On Earth.
That's right. The mound builders and giants in ancient America, as well as the cultures and technology that existed farther back in antiquity than we are told, and much more. Josh is striving to bring history and archaeology to the people in a do-it-yourself fashion outside of the typical official story of academia. You can find more information about our guest and about the program that he's working with at theglobalreality.com, theglobalreality.com. And check it out. It's fascinating stuff. Josh, thank you so much for joining us here this evening and talking to us about kind of these secret mysteries of ancient America here.
Well, it's great to be with you guys, and I'm excited to get into talking all about this stuff with you tonight. I mean, I know that it probably sounds on the surface to some of your listeners like it doesn't have anything to do with quote-unquote paranormal stuff, but, this is one of the exciting things to talk about with all this information because it's one of the things I really didn't count on, but there is definitely a connection there, so I'm excited.
Very cool. Yeah, and aside from doing ghost UFOs, psychic phenomena, all this, we also like to talk about these hidden cultures and unknown bits of reality that's taken place in our own backyard. And there are so many of these strange mysteries. A few years ago, we talked to a gentleman who talked to us about these pyramids that are in lakes in Wisconsin, pyramids that date back and may even predate the Mayan and Incan and Aztec pyramids. They're built the same and everything, but they're in an actual lake in Wisconsin. So when we start talking about this, you start to wonder just how much does our government know? Do historians know, but they're keeping secret, and for what purpose? So it's always intriguing when somebody is willing to come out and shine the light on this topic. What got you inspired to start researching all this really kind of interesting background on the Americas?
Well, it really started with this Rockwall phenomenon, and for those people who don't know, Rockwall, Texas is a suburb of Dallas, Texas, and it's about 20 miles east of Dallas. And so I grew up, maybe about another 20 miles away from there. My whole life lived in the area, kind of the suburbs around Rockwall, and just had various experiences as a teenager around that area and talked to many other people around this area, everything from, poltergeist activity to UFO sightings. A friend of mine, when we were 16, experienced had a missing time episode where we lost 5 hours of time right near the area where this rock wall is. Another time, years later, the same friend and I had another experience where we were hit by some sort of energy. It's the only way I can describe it, really. I don't know if it was demonic energy or what it was, but it hit us, knocked us flat on our rear ends, and just shocked us. I mean, we were in complete shock and traumatized after this. And so I've been researching, I started out when I was younger researching UFOs. Teenager, I got into JFK stuff, and then
what really interested you? What interested you, Josh, in the UFO phenomena above all?
Well, that's hard to say. I really don't know because, from a very young age, literally third grade, I was researching UFOs, and I think the first thing I ever saw that really got me into was back in the 1980s. HBO had a special, I can't remember the name of it, on UFOs, and it had the first time I'd ever seen first-hand accounts of people who had been abducted, the first time I'd seen actual footage. So I think from there, it was really at a young age that got me exploring all this stuff and looking into this. And of course, years later when I grew up and had been researching other topics, I was reading Jim Marr's book in 2004, the Rule by Secrecy book, and it mentioned this ancient and mysterious rock wall. And immediately, as soon as I heard about this, I just somehow knew there was a connection to all these things I'd experienced before. And at that point, just had dedicated myself to researching it. And it's been a culmination of almost 10 years making this film that we're talking about tonight.
Very cool. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got more with our guest, Joshua Reeves. And you can find more information on him and on his documentary at theglobalreality.com. Again, that's theglobalreality.com. Tonight, we're talking about the lost secrets of ancient America with Josh Reeves. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is Darkness Radio. I am your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. And tonight, Tim, we're investigating ancient America. There's some really weird little interesting history and backstories we just don't know about. A lot of legends, too, that you hear about that have been brushed away as nothing more than legend. Have you ever followed along on this? Is there anything that ever really kind of caught your attention as being weird that took place right here in the United States that they found recently or within the last 100 years?
As a matter of fact, yes.
What is it?
Well, it just so happens that there is a story about how Sasquatch had emigrated from France to Canada down into the United States through Minnesota. Turns out it was just my family.
Oh,
yeah.
That was it?
Yeah. Although I got some interesting...
You are a hairy group.
We are, and I did get some interesting stuff off of Ancestry.com. So, but other than that, no.
That's it. Well, our guest tonight is Josh Reeves, and Josh is sharing his wealth of knowledge in his research doing this. Again, you can check more information on his website, theglobalreality.com. When is your radio show on, Josh?
Well, that's a good question. We're never really on at the same time. It's usually around these hours, usually around midnight to 3 a.m., something around there. But it just changes. We're going to have a relaunch of the show on the network here in the next couple of weeks, and it'll go to midnight central after that. So
very cool. So check it out. You can go to his website. It's theglobalreality.com. And tonight we're talking about the mysteries right here in our own backyard. Now you were starting to talk to us about this location in Texas and how this really kind of intrigued you. Let's go back to that and start to give us some of the history and the background on this.
Well, excellent. And yeah, that was the big thing that got me into it. And once I had found out about it, I just kept digging and wanted to see what I could find. And unfortunately, I started to find that there's really not a lot of information about it. So I thought it was best to go and start looking at who had done archaeological digs on this stuff already, what they had found. And so I found a gentleman by the name of John Lindsay who had conducted a dig in the late 90s at the rock wall, and started getting a lot of really important information from him, from his experiences. And then I started looking at the whole history and really was taken aback by how rooted the history of this town Rockwall is with this structure. And to give people a background of what it is, it's a 20-mile diameter structure that's buried 7 stories underground, and it's not visible from the ground. So people out there listening are thinking, "Oh, just going to go out to Rockwall and see it." You can't. It's all covered right now. But when they really first started setting up the town, you had a couple of gentlemen who had come from other states. They hadn't set up any farming communities yet, so they hadn't really done any water well digging. And about a year after the town was founded, it had no name at that point. And farming communities started being set up, and every time these guys would go in and try to set up water wells, they would always hit this stone structure they couldn't get through to get any groundwater. And so they brought in a couple of guys that had originally settled there, who both happened to be members of the Freemason organization. They came in, took a look at the wall, and these gentlemen who had set up these farms were fighting amongst each other, wanting to name the town after themselves. And once these gentlemen took a look at this structure, they realized, from the stone masonry work to the trowel work with the buttering of the stones that's made of this strange geopolymer crystal material, they knew immediately that someone had been here prior to the settlers there. And so they decided that because of that, they had to name the town Rockwall. And so through the years, there were various institutions like the Smithsonian and other people who had come and done research on the wall and examined it, put out reports. The Smithsonian did their famous report in 1927, deemed the wall to be a natural structure, and that opinion stands to this day, even though there has been tons of other contrary information that's come out to prove otherwise. And that's really the goal of this film, is to force a reexamination of this, because there's plenty of evidence that does show that this is not some natural formation. You have a cast stone structure that is leveled at 550 feet above sea level. I mean, the entire structure, even as the terrain changes, the structure itself never strays above. It's exactly 550 feet above sea level, 20 miles in diameter, and it's made of not really rock, but actually crystals and rare earth metals, and some of which in the makeup of the stone do not occur naturally together in nature, like titanite and brookite. Normally we have to get those materials and blend them together to make titanium, but here, in the only time this has ever been found anywhere on Earth, they exist simultaneously in these stones in the rock wall. And so, as I had discussed things with John Lindsay and found out his findings, things started to get pretty interesting as far as the conclusiveness of this not being a natural formation. So after that, I started researching and trying to find out if there were, other strange things found around the area, and indeed there were. I wanted to find out if there was any precedent for these kind of things being found in other places in the United States. And boy, to my surprise, there absolutely are. You guys mentioned earlier in the show the Rock Lake Pyramids in Wisconsin, which I hope to do an investigation on for future volumes of the film. And that's just one of many. And the interesting thing about this film that people will see in my movie is that all of these sites, and really many sites around the world, we're taught to believe in this separation, but really there's no separation. All of these things are very interconnected, and people will see that evidence in the film.
All right, I've got to ask you, I'm so not an archaeologist kind of guy. I love watching, the different history specials and everything like this, but it sounds like you've really been into this and enjoy this. I've got to ask you, how far back is how far down did you say this rock wall went?
7 stories. 7 stories
it went down, but I mean, how from the topsoil down to the top of the fence, how deep is it?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, from the topsoil, the thing about the wall is that you've got various levels of this thing, and there's different architecture to it. And the deeper you go, the older the stones get. But down to the bedrock from the ground, it's roughly 7 stories.
I understand that the sands of time are always changing, but how can something that large get buried through time? These, megalithic walls and monolithic statues and things like this that just get buried. And I understand, maybe they fall down and 20 feet of dirt gets put over it. But have you found in the study of archaeology and all of these hidden dig sites and things like that have popped up? I mean, I got to guess the world has definitely put on a lot of weight over the last million years or so, because I just don't understand how things are that deep down into the ground and covered.
I can't really speak to how a lot of the other sites have been covered up around the world. I mean, obviously with the pyramids and stuff like that, sand over time, that's going to happen. But with the rock wall specifically, we do know why and how it was covered. And this came from the analysis that John Lindsay did on the soil, caliche soil and clay and blue shale underground that impacts and covers this wall. And basically, the short story of it is the soil analysis indicates that at roughly 12,000 years ago, a catastrophic event occurred in the Gulf of Mexico that pushed all this overburden and stuff from the bottom of the ocean and all this seawater up out of the Gulf of Mexico and over the land, and essentially covered up the rock wall and kept it covered all this time. And the reason that, besides the soil evidence, the other stuff we have to support that is when John Lindsay began to dig pretty deep down, 35, 40 feet, they started to encounter all this water that would seep up, and it was hindering their digging efforts, so they had to pump out all this water. They thought it was just normal groundwater, but turns out they started finding shark's teeth embedded into this wall, and they found fresh sand dollars that were not petrified. When you cracked them open, they had fresh meat inside it. And the reason this is because this catastrophic event that happened 12,000 years ago, presumably what they called the Great Flood, impacted this site, covered it with all this overburden, and the water was sealed under hundreds and hundreds of feet of this impacted clay soil, sandstone, all of this stuff, and it kept these materials, the shark's teeth and the sand dollars, preserved in that water under the ground. And when they get down to the bottom, of these stones, they start to examine the building structure and realize that it was built in 3.5 feet of seawater. So it's, I mean, I'll leave it to your imagination where it goes from there. But that's the interesting thing about it. It's a great question. How does this stuff get covered? And a lot of it gets covered up by time. And then, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of it gets swept under the rug and covered up with intent.
Crazy stuff. Josh Reeves, our guest this evening, as we explore the lost secrets of ancient America. Again, Josh Reeves is our guest. You can check out his website and get more information on him and the work and research that he does. Find out how you can get the documentary. You can do that by going to his website, theglobalreality.com. Again, theglobalreality.com. Stay tuned. We've got more Darkness Radio coming your way right after this. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. You're tuned in to Darkness Radio. We're here Friday, or 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, rather. This Friday, though, we've got something pretty cool happening in studio, live here in St. Louis Park. We want you to be a part of it. You're invited Friday, March 8th, and doors are going to open up about 6:30. We'll start seating people, and 7:30, we're going to fire off. You get a special sneak viewing of a brand new movie called, and it's a psychological thriller called Profile of a Killer. Which will begin here at 7:30. We will actually have a few of the people involved in the film that'll be on site with us for that. And then afterwards, we'll have a small break with a gallery session from our very good friend, Paranormal Sarah, will be in studio with us doing a little gallery session and psychic Q&A for our audience. Then at 10 p.m. to midnight, you get to be a part of the audience for Supernatural News Live. Right after that, we're heading over to Cooper here at the West End in St. Louis Park to have a couple of drinks and get to know you, the listeners. I hope that you'll be a part of it with us, and this is how you can do it. Are you ready, Tim?
I'm ready.
They're going to call you. Tim.
What?
Yes. Should I give your home phone number?
I am not that reliable or responsible.
Well, then I'll have to give it to you right here while we have got the studio number then. 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855 to be a part of Friday night's live show. You can give us a call. Tim will take your name, number, and email address. We'll shoot out an email to you tonight with the invitation for you and a guest to join us. We're going to have a great time, and I hope that you will join us and have a lot of fun. That's going to take place again this upcoming Friday night. So doors open at 6:30, movie starts at 7:30, and we're going to have a blast. Seats are first come, first serve, 651-989-5855, and that takes place this week. Also want to mention, you can join me along with our good friend Jeff Belanger from the lead writer of Ghost Adventures and Ghost Village, written over 12 different books on the paranormal, and we are going to be out and about haunting and hunting the very haunted Houghton Mansion in Massachusetts, Friday, April 5th through Sunday, April 7th. You can be a part of that. It's a great little event. Only $149 for the entire weekend, or just $125 for the Saturday only program. Tickets are available at legendtrips.com. legendtrips.com. And we're going to be joined by a bunch of other great guests, including Ron Kolick, Tim Weisberg, and Andrew Lake, Josh Mantello, Matt Muniz. So we're going to be out there having a good time investigating the Houghton Mansion in Massachusetts. That's coming up in April from the 5th to the 7th. If you want to join us out there, you can go get tickets at legendtrips.com. Tickets are limited and will go fast. Our guest this evening is here to talk to us about the lost secrets of ancient America, a documentary that he has got out and available. And can people order this right off of your website, Josh? Is it on DVD form? Is it electric download form? What can they do to watch this?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. Right now, you can get the digital downloads in two qualities at my website, theglobalreality.com. There's a regular HD version, it's 4.7 gigs, and then there's a full Blu-ray quality HD version as well. And the DVDs and Blu-ray should be on sale on the website this week.
Fantastic. Now, again, give them the website. They can go find out more information.
That's theglobalreality.com, and they can also just go to Google and type in Josh Reeves, and my website's the first one that comes up.
Excellent. While we were at break, I got an email from one of our listeners who just goes by the name Joe. He says, Dave, I'm wondering if your guest has ever heard about that rock they found that's, dated to be about 1 million years old. When they x-ray it, it looks like it's got one of those electrical insulators you see on the electric poles. How did that thing get out there? How was that found? And is it an actual piece of machinery with metal gears from like thousands of years ago? Have you heard about this? Are you familiar with what he's referring to?
Yeah, I am. I'm pretty sure I am. If he's talking about something different, he may want to send you an email and say so. But I'm about 99% sure I know what he's talking about. It's called the Antikythera mechanism. And it was found off the coast of Crete and underwater, just buried, just down deep. I forget how I think there was some sort of, I don't remember what was happening. They were pulling something off the ocean floor and pulled this thing up. And essentially what it is, it's a clockwork meshing gear system that predates any clock mechanisms known to man that we ever had. And it's a precise measurement device for navigation using the stars. And they actually have this thing on display. They've rebuilt it. It still works. In fact, they even made a replica of it out of Legos just to show the technology of this thing. No one knows who built it, but it's obvious that whoever had it dumped it into the ocean thinking no one would ever find it and hoping no one would ever find it, because it gives evidence of there being that kind of technology predating what we know it to be. And a lot of this stuff is found all over the place. And a lot of this stuff I talk about in the film. I mean, there's a tile floor that dates to over 200,000 years they found near Oklahoma City in Oklahoma. There's a stone hammer they found encased in rock in south central Texas. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And what I try to do with this film is to show people not only the information of the rock wall, but also we get into information about giant skeletons found in mounds, which are other ancient sites that are found all around the United States. And we also get into how the Smithsonian Institution has covered up a lot of these finds because of their strict isolationist viewpoints. And anytime anybody finds any artifacts that they can't get their hands on, well, they just say they're fake and they move on. But the interesting thing is that we have a ton of evidence that connects all of this stuff to ancient Middle Eastern cultures and cultures that go back to ancient Iraq and Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. And again, people can see all that in the film. It's just fascinating.
All right, our guest this evening, Josh Reeves, and we are talking with him about his work and his documentary, which is The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. We're going to take another quick break here. We come back, we'll discuss more. We've got Josh. You're going to be hanging in with us for the next hour, too, correct?
Oh, yeah.
All right, great. So stay tuned. More Josh Reeves, more Darkness Radio right after this. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. You're tuned in to Darkness Radio, heard here on the Twin Cities News Talk station, AM 1130, 103.5 FM, and TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. I'm your host, Dave Schroeder, along with me, Tim Dennis. Don't forget tomorrow to watch Episode 2 of Stranded on the Sci-Fi Channel. It turns the paranormal TV show on its ear. Stranded, Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Check your local listings and times for your area and watch it. I definitely loved the first episode. I'm looking forward, and Josh told me off the air tonight that the first episode was great. He says they only get better going forward. So
I have two priorities for watching. One is Stranded. I got to catch up on that first episode.
Yes.
The second one, I missed Old School Raw last night, so WWE. So, but Stranded first. I gotta.
Good. Well, that's good of you.
I got to catch up on Stranded first.
Our guest this evening is Josh Reeves. He is a researcher, investigator, and the documentarian of The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. And we were talking to him about his work. Interesting stuff. Let's go back in talking about some of these other mysteries and things that have really kind of caught your attention and intrigued you. I mean, we just talked about, as one of our listeners mentioned, this item that was found in a rock that they thought were, predated man, or what they knew of man existing. How many of these strange anomalies, time anomalies, really pop up, and especially here in our own backyard in the United States, of items that just don't seem to fit the time era or the probability of what existed at that time?
Well, there are many, and there's too many to even talk about here, or even to talk about in my film. There's so many of them, but we do get into some of them in the film. And one of the more significant ones that ties in directly with the rock wall research, one of the artifacts that was found near the rock wall was a 2.5-ton garnet stone that they dubbed the Sanders Stone, which was found to have hieroglyphics that were similar to a set of hieroglyphics found in one of the chambers in one of the pyramids in Egypt. And now, in the late 1800s, at a site in Illinois, there was some gentlemen who found in a well some kind of an ancient coin that was made out of an unidentifiable metal that was cut like a quarter, had cut edges like a quarter. It was almost the same size, and it had this strange image of a woman holding she had a crown on her head, holding a torch, and she was like talking to a child, and then it had these strange inscriptions around the side and on the back. And this was in the Smithsonian Institution for quite some time. And then people started figuring out, wait a minute, this inscription that's on this coin, and by the way, this coin was found in a soil strata that dated to over 200,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and the hieroglyphics, and you can see this, you can see both the sandstone and an image of the coin in the film. They have almost identical hieroglyphics on them, and that's the interesting thing about the rock wall is this dating, because as I mentioned earlier, with the soil analysis that was done that determined a catastrophic event covered it up some 12,000 years ago, it also showed that it was at some point uncovered around 400,000 to 20,000 years ago. The tile floor I mentioned earlier that was found underground, a perfectly matched tile floor found in Oklahoma, that also dated to around 200,000 years. Here in Dallas, which is, again, about 30 miles east from where the rock wall is located at, they found in the late 1800s some local city workers who were digging waterways in Dallas found at a strata of soil where they were pulling mastodon bones out of 3 triangular-shaped plates that had Phoenician writing on them and rang like a bell when they were struck with a pickaxe. You had a statue that was found in a well in Oklahoma by a woman that dated to a person who ruled. It was a depiction of a ruler who was a ruler over China hundreds of years before the birth of Christ. Just strangely, in some crazy well, in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, you've had, chunks of coal that have been broken open where they found, Swiss-style wristwatches inside of it. There's so many, and people can go and research these on their own if they go and type OOPARTS, OOPARTS, into a Google search engine, out-of-place artifacts. They'll find listings of these, and they can go and look at it, to their heart's desire. But for the film, I really only wanted to concentrate on the ones that really gave a lot of evidence to this prior civilization and prior advanced civilizations that existed in the Americas, way before Christopher Columbus, Lee Erickson, or anybody else.
When you talk about these out-of-place items, and you cover some in your documentaries you just mentioned, where do you weigh in on that? I mean, do you think that this is something that they're just inaccurately carbon dating or dating the time to, and, maybe it was just the fact somebody else had been digging there, 100 years ago and dropped the watch?
Maybe in some of those cases, maybe so, but the ones that interest me the most are the ones like this, what they call the Ordovician hammer that they found, I mentioned earlier. I mean, this stuff is encased in rock formations that they know for a fact, and it's beyond carbon dating, they know for a fact these rock formations formed in some cases millions of years ago. They found the femur bone of some sort of giant man encased in rock in Nevada that dated to like the Jurassic period. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of years ago. So there definitely is a lot of evidence, not just in the United States, but throughout the world, that civilizations have been rising and falling and crumbling on this planet longer than we've been told.
Right, and that's where it gets really intriguing for me, is to feel, we all think that, within the last 2,000 years is pretty much, according to religion, where we came from. Historically, they think, what is it, within 10,000 years when man was actually kind of running things or showing up and making himself known. But there are all of these different stories. And I mean, we've heard of Atlantis and all of these possible cultures that may have existed at one point in history, that predate what we know to exist now. But to actually find proof of these items, that's where it gets intriguing and kind of astounds me that I guess in this day and age, with all of the digging, building, landscaping that's done, there's not more of this coming up. And why is it that they're only finding, if they've done these deep soundgrams to find these, walls and everything, are they finding statuary? Are they finding buildings and things underneath the ground as well to figure out that this is all coming from a specific civilization, something that would know more than just building a wall?
No, I mean, most of this stuff, though, is covered up. I mean, the little stuff that we know about has just been from clandestine operations and stuff that people have found on accident. I mean, there were, when colonial America first started forming, people first started coming east to west to colonize the United States. There were literally upwards of almost 1 million ancient mound sites found all over the United States. They found this whole country was littered with sites. And what's interesting is that a lot of the locations of cities, big cities that we know about now, any city you can name in the United States, they were built in those locations. I mean, sometimes when you're a kid, I remember when I was a kid, I used to wonder, why did they decide to build this city here and not, 100 miles that way where there's nothing? Why did they decide to build it here? And then you find out in all of these areas, when the settlers first started coming across, the reason they settled in these areas that became the location of cities was because when they got there were already pre-existing civilizations that had come and gone. And they found these mound sites and everything else. The fact of the matter is, I mean, much of the rock wall is covered by houses, buildings, Walmarts. I mean, I went to go visit the largest mound in the state of Alabama only to find out it had been bulldozed and had a Sam's Club built on top of it. There are site after site after site, and a lot of times because this stuff upsets both the scientific and religious apple cart, they don't even act like it even exists. They sweep it under the rug and build new stuff on it. We're lucky that there have been people through the years who had foresight enough to save some of these locations, like the Serpent Mound in Ohio, the Newark Earthworks. Ohio is just full of stuff. Where you guys are at, Minnesota. Minnesota is chock full of ancient stuff. There are you've got rune stones that have been found out there, giant skeletons that have been found in mounds.
Well, let's go back to the mounds that you were talking about. I want to talk a little bit about the mounds first. Now, when you refer to a mound, a lot of people are still out there. We know about some of the Indian burial mounds where they would keep their dead in one area, but some were, are there structures under some of these mounds? What exactly can you tell us about them in the next couple of minutes before we go to the top of the hour break?
Well, it's a great question because it was a question I didn't know the answer to before I started the investigation into this film. I was coming from the same standpoint as you and probably everybody else. But what I found is that these mound sites are never used for the same thing. Like, as you mentioned, some cases, yes, they are burial mounds. But what shocked me the most was that in an alarming number of mounds all over the United States, every time that these are excavated, they found the skeletons of giant people, over and over and over again. And not just one or two, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I have those detailed in the film as well, the news reports. But a lot of them were ceremonial sites. They're almost in all cases aligned to the same celestial locations as the Great Pyramids in Giza are located. They're aligned to Cygnus and Orion, and they're aligned to the equinoxes and the solstices. They're basically track the events of solar happenings and things that happen in the star system. That's the short answer.
And those, again, that's right here in our backyard with a lot of these. I know there's many different mounds that are across Minnesota that they've found. Now, do you know, when I talked about the structures, some have been found that actually very Hobbit-like homes have been found in some of these mounds when they dig into it. Is there truth behind this, or is this more perpetuated nonsense from Hollywood to sell movies?
No, I mean, it's true. There are some that they do appear to be habitations. Habitated by what? I couldn't venture a guess. But there are some that do appear to be. Well, it appears that possibly at some point they were chambered burials where you would have various people entombed in one tomb, and then later on were used by somebody else as some sort of enclosure. The rock wall has that same thing too. It appears that somebody much later than the actual builders built onto this thing and used it as a habitation much later.
Unbelievable. Our guest this evening, Josh Reeves. We are talking with him. He'll be here for the next hour with us as well about his documentary and the work that he's done investigating these strange secrets, these lost secrets of ancient America. And we're going to take a break here. We'll come back. We're going to discuss more after the top of the hour news break and weather and catch up. But we've got a whole nother hour. If you're familiar with some stories and cases, things that you've heard that you've often wondered if there was any reality behind them, and you'd like to enlighten us here at Darkness Radio and find out if Josh is familiar, give us a call, 651-989-5855. 651-989-5855. Stay tuned. More of the best in paranormal talk radio when we return. This is Darkness Radio. Good evening, welcome. This is hour 2 of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio, and I am your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. We've got a great show lined up for you this evening. We're talking to Josh Reeves. We're going to return talking with him. Tomorrow night, the one and only Rosemary Ellen Guiley is going to be back with us talking more about the jinn. We're going to talk about the supernatural, and we'll open up phones to your calls. If you have questions for the undisputed supernatural empress Rosemary Ellen Guiley, you can be a part of the show tomorrow as well. Friday night, you do not want to miss this. It is our live supernatural news night, and what we're doing is really special. Doors will open at about 6:30. Once you're here no later than 7. At 7:30, we're going to give you a free preview of a brand new movie, and you get to see the entire thing called Profile of a Killer, and we will be showing that a full week before it's available anywhere else. We'll have a few of the people involved in the movie with us in studio. And then afterwards, we'll have a small Q&A, psychic Q&A with Paranormal Sarah right here in studio. And then at 10 o'clock, we're going to fire off our live supernatural news. You can stay and be a part of our live studio audience, or you can head over to Cooper's right here in the West End, and we will meet you there right after the show. We'll have drinks and hang out and get a chance to know you, the listeners. If you want to be a part of this fun, then you can do it right now one of two ways. You can email me at dave@darknessradio.com, and that's good for all of our listeners that are checking out the podcast. Just email me at dave@darknessradio.com, and I'll shoot you over an email invitation for that. We are going to have some cool giveaways. We may even have a game show during the show. We might do another Stump the Star, where we'll put a certain celebrity up on stage, and you'll have to we'll pick somebody from the audience, and I'll have a list of questions regarding the paranormal and see who's smarter, a local celebrity or one of our average Joes in the audience.
I like it.
Yeah, we'll have fun with that. If you want to do it, call us right now. 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855. We're also working on getting free passes for everyone that attends for the movie Stoker, which is coming out.
Really?
Yes. And possibly, I'm really fighting hard for this, trying to get passes for our entire audience to see the sneak preview of the new Evil Dead movie.
Get out of here.
It's true. That's all coming up.
You, sir, are too good to this audience.
I love my audience. I love them.
You're too good.
651-989-5855. You can call during the show tonight. We'll get you queued up, and you could be a part of our live in-studio presentation. That's this Friday. And or email me at dave@darknessradio.com. Right now, we're going to go back to our guest. We have Josh Reeves on the line with us, and Josh is an investigator, researcher, and a documentarian. His new documentary, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America, is out and available. You can find more information right from his website. Go ahead and give that information again.
It's theglobalreality.com. It's www.theglobalreality.com, where people can just go to Google and type in Josh Reeves, and mine's the first website that comes up.
Great. So check it out, and you'll be able to watch. And it's a hell of a documentary. It's not just some little, 30-minute in and out. You've actually gone very in depth. How long is this documentary?
It's 3 hours and 34 minutes.
3 hours and 34 minutes. So you guys can buy this now. If I go buy it and watch it, stream it off your site, and I don't have a full 3 hours and 34 minutes to watch it, can I break it up? Can I watch an hour a day? Will it allow me to go back in and watch it once I've purchased it?
Sure. This is a download. Once you download it, you own it. It's as if you bought it off iTunes or anything else. So, yes, you'll be able to pause it at your discretion.
All right, great. Let's talk more about the research and the workings that you have into this documentary and some of the stuff that really intrigued you. Now, you were talking about right here in Minnesota that we've got some of these mounds, we've got the rune stones, giants. Can you give us some history and some of the stories of our own backyard creatures and strange things that have gone on? Give us a little bit more detail about the things that you do know about, like these giant bones and the rune stones that are here.
Okay. Well, sadly enough, I haven't gotten to that area yet.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Josh. We're gonna. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, the thing about it is this is only volume 1, so we're going to be making probably up to 3 volumes of this, and I hope in the future volumes to be able to come up to your area to explore some of these. But what we know right now is that the area, I mean, all the states, Minneapolis, Wisconsin, as you mentioned earlier with the Rock Lake Pyramids, Ohio, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma. You have this Michigan as well. I mean, even in Michigan, there are ancient, there's copper mines that they found there that has evidence of copper mining going on thousands of years in the past. And Minnesota itself is actually full of lots of mounds. Yes, they have extracted giant skeletons upwards of 12, 14 feet, 9 feet out of these mounds in that area. The runestone as well. I actually visited a runestone in Oklahoma that may or may not be connected to the one in Minnesota. But the interesting thing, as I mentioned earlier, is there doesn't seem to be any separation between these sites. I mean, you start to find the same sort of inscriptions, the same sort of dialects, artifacts. I mean, the artifacts that were made from the copper that was mined from Michigan, because with copper, it's a thing where you can go and test it, and you can tell exactly where that was mined from based on samples that came from that particular mine. And so the copper that was mined out of Michigan in the ancient past has been found in artifacts and in mound sites throughout the United States, and has also been found as far-flung as the Middle East, Europe, places all over the world. But the interesting thing about these mound sites, as we mentioned earlier, is the nature of these things being, in some cases, being ceremonial sites, in some cases being burial sites. And one of the more interesting ones is the Toltec mounds in Arkansas. And I wanted to make sure and mention this tonight on your show, because I know it's something your listeners are probably going to be very interested in.
Well, let's come back to that in a second, but let me ask you real quickly on this. When you talk about these mines and these mines that they found that predate when they thought men were down there, there has been a lot of conspiracy theory that aliens have been mining our planet for centuries, millennia, if you will, using some of the natural resources here. And maybe some of these things that we're finding are cast-offs from their craft. That's why you only find a one-off piece here and there. You're not finding an entire, electrical piece of equipment and all of this, diodes and so on and so forth. As a researcher and an investigator and somebody that was interested in aliens and UFOs yourself, where does that come down in your world of possibility?
Well, honestly, that it's really something that in this particular film, I try to allow the people to watch it to draw their own conclusions. For instance, I don't try in the film myself to connect all of this stuff to extraterrestrials, to UFOs, or any of that. I stick strictly to the information to show all the connections, but therein lies the whole thing. I mean, by the time you look at this information and you go over it, I mean, there's really nowhere else to go but to connect this. And if people are familiar with the stuff pertaining to the Anunnaki and genetic manipulation of humans, I mean, all this stuff ties into that, and the artifacts in a lot of these sites around the United States that I detail in the film show evidence and show names that only exist in ancient Sumerian texts that go back to these tales of, the Anunnaki and the Nephilim and all of this stuff. I mean, it's ultimately fascinating, but as I said, if someone wants to make that connection on their own when they watch this film and look at this information, I wouldn't say personally that they're far off the mark. But I really didn't want to come to that conclusion for people, because I wanted people to be able to look at it objectively and decide for themselves.
And that's the documentary. The documentary is done in a journalistic way with its own integrity so that you leave it to the people. But I'm just curious where you come down on this yourself. Do you think that has more of a reality or what?
My thing is I just flat don't know. And if I was to say one way or the other right now, it wouldn't be doing me or the listeners or anybody out there justice. I mean, it's an open investigation. Like I said, I believe that if someone makes that statement, says that it's, somehow connected to this, they're probably not far off. But our understanding of what aliens and UFOs and all of that stuff really are, I think, is very limited. I think most people's perception of it is very far off from what the reality of it is. I believe that advanced people, not unlike ourselves, came from other places, seeded mankind with knowledge, information, and set themselves up as gods. I mean, if you or I, Dave, went to some foreign land or some foreign planet where you had sort of a low-level intelligence type of people who really didn't know how to fend for themselves or farm or make food or anything or make habitations, and we went and taught them these things, they would immediately revere us as gods because we brought them out of this state of civilization they couldn't bring themselves out of. And to me, that's really what describes all this in a nutshell.
All right. We've got a couple of listeners that are calling in with some questions and thoughts. Let's take those calls real quickly here, Josh, and then we will get more into some of the points you wanted to mention here tonight. Jeremy in Burlington, Vermont, thank you for staying up late with us, Jeremy. What did you want to talk about?
I want to talk about, there's a show on History 2, which used to be History International. It's running right now. Yeah, I want to say it started back in December, but it's called History on Earth. It deals with all of this stuff in North America. As far as like the Kennington Runestone, various theories about the Templars actually being here long before anyone else, and the Vikings included in that. And it just so happens that a lot of these sites that people are finding are on government-protected land, and the government doesn't want anything to do with these studies. They back away from it completely.
Why do you think that is, Jeremy? Do you think it's because they are covering up and they knew about these things? That's why they took over those pieces of property?
I think it's being hidden on purpose. I think it's because they want to maintain what their structure of history says was done. It's been speculated for a long, long time that Christopher Columbus wasn't the first and probably wasn't even the fifth person to find what we call America nowadays.
Very cool. What do you say on that, Josh? He mentions the fact that, the question is not that Christopher Columbus found America, but that he wasn't maybe even in the first 5 or 6 people.
No, I agree with everything that Jeremy said. He's right on. The point of these shows, though, is to deflect. They sort of want to, send you towards a conclusion they already have predestined. That's one of the great things about my film is you'll see really the who and what of who these guys may have been. He's absolutely right. They do want to keep this stuff covered up, and it is about keeping that line, that historical line that we've been told, and even the scientific and religious line, right where they wanted that, because if you unravel, it's like pulling a string on a sweater. If you unravel one string, eventually the whole thing comes crumbling down, and that's what they are trying to keep from happening right now. And slowly but surely it's happening. And I've actually been approached by a few of these TV networks to do shows, and then they take my ideas, and then I never hear anything from them. But I heard specifically from one of the top TV networks out there, I don't want to say which one, that the audiences want information and shows like what we're talking about here tonight because they are fed up with the stuffy academic types and won't watch those shows anymore. So I think it's really people are really starting to figure this out. They're looking at the evidence, and it sounds like Jeremy there has done his own homework on this stuff as well. Jeremy, thanks for tuning in and being a part of the show tonight.
Sure, no problem.
I appreciate it. All right, let's grab on to Christy in Inver Grove Heights. Christy, welcome to the show. Christy? And you had your chance. Sorry, Christy. You can give us a call back in. 651-989-5855. 651-989-5855. If you have questions for our guests regarding any of the ancient mysteries surrounding the Americas and what we may be dealing with, our guest is here talking about his documentary, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. Josh Reeves is our guest. Josh, give him that website again. TheGlobalReality.com. TheGlobalReality.com, and they can find your radio show there, the archives. They can also find information about you and the work you do, and they can find the downloads, and they can actually download and own this 3-hour and 34-minute documentary for themselves.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's go back in. You said that there was something you definitely wanted to cover here. We've got about 10 minutes before the next break. What was that? And let's delve in.
Well, it's one of these mound sites that I visited, and it's in a place called, I think, Scott, Arkansas. It's right outside Little Rock, Arkansas. It's called the Toltec Mounds. Have you guys ever heard of that?
I have not.
Well, it's something you guys, I think, specifically with your line of work and what you guys research would be something to definitely check out. Because I didn't even find this out until after I went there and filmed, and then once I found this specific piece of information out, it was like everything made sense. It's known as the highest, most paranormal site in all of Arkansas. And what's fascinating about it is that you would normally associate this with an area that would be, burial mounds and stuff like that. People died there, whatever have you. But this site actually has only a few burial mounds, and they were built much, much later than the people who originally inhabited this area, and they don't know anything about the people that inhabited the area at all, and they're just these giant, massive mounds, and people can see it in my film. But in the area around where these mounds are located, and I went all around this area, all the houses around the area, people have reported, full-on poltergeists, full-on disturbances, just everything that you can imagine. And they also talk about voices in the woods, the feeling of being watched, and I experienced those things. I was filming outside of this and felt constantly, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around watching you, but you have this constant feeling that there's an energy and a presence around you, and you really just want to get out of there as quickly as you can. And so when I got back after having that feeling and feeling creeped out and as if, there was, and I don't get that feeling. I'm not somebody that gets that all the time. I want to be clear about this. This was a very pronounced energy that seemed to be resonating in this spot for a very long time. It seems that whatever occurred here had such a massive energy effect to it that it sustained itself in these mounds up until the present day.
Now, did you know that going in there to investigate that there was a chance, that there were all these claims of feeling like you were being watched and something going on, or this is just what you experienced and then found out it was also going on?
Yeah, I had no idea at the time. It was just on my list. We were going by. I was like, okay, this is a place we want to go get for the film. And at that point, I had no idea that there was any paranormal activity at this site at all. And once I got back and started putting the film together and writing the script and making sure I had all my facts straight, that was when I came across this information of it being this, very well-known paranormal site, the activity just being off the charts there. And it was something I, wanted to mention to you guys just to see if maybe you knew anything about it, but maybe we can try to look further into that.
Please do, yeah. And if you get more information, would love to hear that as well. Our guest this evening, Josh Reeves, we're talking to him about his work in his documentary, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. And that is out and available right now so that you can download it and watch it yourself. When you started doing this, were you open-minded in thinking that, you were going to find a handful of things, or did you realize just how many things were stretched out in front of you and the possibilities?
It really started very simply. I really just started out as it being just an investigation into the rock wall itself. That was my only interest. And as the research progressed and I started trying to find a precedent for this, seeing, okay, if this is isolated and there isn't anything else similar to this that's been found anywhere, then it may be, some kind of anomaly. And so I started researching the mounds because there are mound-type locations that just have huge elevation drops and elevation changes that are unusual in the area around Rockwall. They call this the flatlands, the Blackland Prairie. It's just a flat expanse. There is no other rock that exists in the area at all besides the rock and the rock wall. And when I started researching these mounds, I found that giant skeletons had been found inside of them. Then I started finding reports from the Rockwall newspapers in the late 1800s that they had found the abode of a giant, where they found this giant bed and these giant shoes and all this stuff.
But was this stuff that was in the Weekly World News, the Inquirer from the 80s? Or, why isn't there more made of this? How come we're not seeing this in science books and in history books?
Well, I think the main reason is because it's the real reason why you're not hearing about any of this stuff. It's because the root of it, getting to the root of it, not only smashes the dogma of science, but also in a way, kind of goes to show that maybe some of the stuff in religious texts wasn't all, untrue and all made up. It goes to support that. So it's really a collapse of it. But there are story after story after news story.
But do you think that, like with these giants, it's not the fact that maybe it was just the fact that it was somebody dealing with giantism and for their time they seemed huge and there were special things that were made for them? And by giant, are we talking 7 feet, or are we talking 23 feet in length from what you were able to find out?
It depends on how far back you're talking. The more recent ones that seem to be found in mounds generally average between 9 and 12 feet. The further you go back in time, reports and stuff that was found in the 1500s, deeper locations in France, then you start to go up to 20 foot, 30 foot, and on up. But it's really not something you can really get into and talk about quickly on a radio show like this. That's why I detail it so much more in the film. But the news reports to me are what is important. When you look at the hundreds of news reports there are of these giant skeletons being found specifically in every case around these mound sites, around areas where they found artifacts with strange inscriptions that go back to the Phoenicians, the Amorites of the Middle East, you just start to see this pattern where there's just no way this is all just, weekly world news stuff, as you said. You start to get into the area where the Native American stories line up identically with stories that the Mormons have. You had two different types of these giants. You had a red-haired race who seemed to be benevolent and give the Native Americans knowledge, information. Then you had a dark-haired race that were cannibalistic that existed in the United States before anybody came across the Bering Strait land bridge. And according to Native American traditions, the Native Americans banded with the red-haired version to wipe out the dark-haired version, and then eventually the red-haired ones were wiped out themselves because they were interloping on the natives' lands.
Wow. It's so fascinating history, isn't it? I mean, and as you peel back these layers and of what we thought we knew, and does it just continually blow your mind that this onion just keeps peeling more layers back and there's more history and mystery behind every one of these skins?
Oh, absolutely. Because if it was just isolated in one area, and that's what I thought it was at first. I mean, when I first got into the rock wall thing, I thought this was just an isolated thing. I had no idea, number one, that it extended throughout the United States and all of, pretty much the North and South American continents. And it was blown away even more to find that the one thing that none of the researchers, none of the people at the Smithsonian or anything else had ever done with any of these artifacts, they never cross-referenced them with texts and artifacts that came from the ancient Middle East. And when you do that, you start to find connection after connection. I think that right there is the key to the whole cover-up.
All right. There's certainly some to that. I guess I have a hard time of why would it, I understand religion. You certainly don't want to, the religious sect does not want to have things betray what is said in the Bible and that we've only been around 2,000 years. But there's now this separation of church and state. What does the government care if this is going on and that there are these cultures and in ancient deals and that they don't have all the answers? I mean, 120 years ago, people scoffed at these giant hairy things in Africa that, were seen in the forest, that they talked these giant hairy men and, it doesn't exist. And then, man, all of a sudden there they are, gorillas, the great gorilla. And, we're constantly finding new things about our lives and about our history and where we came from. I just have a hard time understanding, unless it is alien technology, why the government would hide these parts of our civilization. I think that would make us as humans feel even better about ourselves, that, listen, we've apparently lived time and time and time again. And even if we do fall, there's a chance that we will rise again.
Well, you're getting into the real deep territory now, Dave. I mean, this is where it starts to get, and it's a tough question. It's a great question. But this is where it starts to get into the deep end of things that may be hard for people to understand. The fact of the matter is... Well,
I'll tell you what, we have to take a break. I'll give you a little chance to mull it around. Maybe you can kick me a couple of your thoughts and ideas on this, and we'll discuss more when we return. Our guest this evening is Josh Reeves, and we are talking to him about his documentary, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. Again, with guest Josh Reeves, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got more. If you have questions or things that you've seen in history and these strange, mysterious things that you might know about here in the United States that we haven't spoken about and you'd like to chime in, 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855. And join Jeff Belanger and I this April 5th through the 7th as we go to the haunted Houghton Mansion out in Massachusetts. There is a great opportunity. You can come for an entire weekend event or just join us for the Saturday event, dinner, and ghost hunt. There are tickets and information at legendtrips.com. legendtrips.com. It's their first ever full weekend package for only $149. You can't go wrong. An entire weekend package includes meals and investigations. Go check out legendtrips.com. Stay tuned. More of the best in Paranormal Talk Radio when we return on Twin Cities News Talk AM 1130, 103.5 FM. Twin Cities News Talk, all coming to you from the renterswarehouse.com studio. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is the best in Paranormal Talk Radio. This is Darkness Radio. I am your host, Dave Schrader. Along with me, Tim Dennis. You can join us here each week, my friend. You're sure to get a smile from these two stupid knuckleheads here on Gilligan's Isle. Is that how the song goes? Something like that?
It's something like that, yeah.
I got nothing. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, and tonight we're talking about ancient civilizations right here in our own backyard, and are talking with guest Josh Reeves. His documentary, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America, is out and available. Give him that website one more time, Josh.
TheGlobalReality.com.
TheGlobalReality.com. Check out the website. Check out the documentary, and I'd love to always hear your feedback. What do you guys think of the documentary? Dave at darknessradio.com. You can email me and let me know. Got a couple other questions rolling in here, Josh. We've got Dan from Menominee. Dan, welcome to the show. What's your question, sir?
Hey, guys. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
Good. I just, I had a quick question about I know like 3,000 years ago, there's always the story about David and Goliath.
Right.
And Goliath being, I think they have a rough estimate of he was about 10 foot.
Okay.
If I'm thinking right. But is that the same type of, would that be like the same type of people you guys are talking about? I know you guys are talking about giants.
Yes, it definitely ties into that, absolutely. And that's one of the interesting things you'll see in my film is how the DNA evidence that's been conducted on the remains of the mound builders from the United States goes directly back to the exact area where the supposed David and Goliath thing happened at, all the way back to the hills of Galilee. That was the Amorite kingdom. The Amorites were known to be giants, and I get into that extensively in the film. And it's interesting that the Amorite mounds that have been found in America have also been found identically in the Middle East, in Syria, Saudi Arabia. So yes, you're right on the same track there.
All right, sweet. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you giving us a call. We've got Mitch in West Central Minnesota. Welcome, Mitch, and what's your question or statement for us this evening?
Well, hi there. Good evening. I just wanted to say, Josh, I've listened to you for about 3 years now, and I'm a big fan. I think you do great work. So I guess my question was, I've heard you talk on some of your shows in the past about Quetzalcoatl and the Mayans and all of that, and you kind of had some information on that maybe connecting to the rock wall. I want you to maybe touch on that.
Well, absolutely, Mitch, and appreciate your comments there. There is a huge connection. In fact, I almost subtitled this film on the trail of the feathered serpent, because at every turn, every site I would visit, you would find these connections to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. There's an artifact that I show in the film that was found near the rock wall that some of the Mayan elders deemed to be an effigy of Quetzalcoatl. The Moundville, Alabama site that I visited, which is a massive mound site in Alabama that was built over the course of 300 years, and its inhabitants just abandoned the site and disappeared out of nowhere after 300 years. It's all aligned to these celestial sites. The original name of America, it comes from not Amerigo Vespucci. That's a complete fabrication. It actually comes from the word Amaruca, which pertains to the South American serpent god Tupac Amaru, whose lands were South America, North America, were called Amaruca, which really roughly translates to the land of the plumed serpent, or the land of the feathered serpent. You see the snake in the eye hand motif at Moundville, Alabama. You see it on artifacts found in Oklahoma, all over the place. And Quetzalcoatl was said to be this, essentially, one of these messianic deities through the years that went to different locations and set up the indigenous populations with culture and everything else. And that's extensively talked about in the film, and you just can't get onto all of it here. But yes, it does show a distinct connection to cultures in the Americas that connect with Mayans and connect with cultures all over the world. And so the serpent symbology is definitely a huge tie-in.
Mitch, thanks a lot for listening and being a part of the show this evening.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We've got on the phone here with us this evening, Josh Reeves is our guest, and we're talking about his documentary. It's out and available right now. It's The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. And we're kind of peeling back these layers. Is there one part of the United States that you found is heavier or more rich in these strange anomalies, I guess, and cultures that seem to be popping up? We're going to throw that question to you. We have to go to a break right now, Josh. We'll come back from our final break and go more into this with you. Again, if you have more information and you'd like to check it out, again, your website for them one more time.
TheGlobalReality.com.
All right, check out the website, check out the documentary, and more. Stay tuned. The best in paranormal talk radio has one more segment coming your way right here on Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130, 103.5 FM, and TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is Darkness Radio. We're your home for the best in paranormal talk radio 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday. And we've got something really exciting popping up later on this week, and we'd like you to be a part of it with us. Hopefully you will join us here in Studio C on Friday night. Doors open at 6:30. We'll start seating people around 7. 7:30, we're going to show a brand new movie that is only going to be shown through our studio a week before it's available anywhere else. That's right, a week before it's available anywhere else. And if you would like to be a part of this, here's how you can do it. It is taking place at 1600 Utica Avenue South here in St. Louis Park. Again, doors open at about 6:30. We'll start letting you in at 7, get you seated. 7:30, we get to see the screening of the psychological thriller Profile of a Killer. Then after that, we'll have Paranormal Sarah, our psychic friend, here to do a small gallery session for you. And 10 o'clock, we will kick off Darkness Radio Live, the supernatural news segment. You guys are welcome to be part of our live audience. After the show, we're all heading over to Cooper's at the West End here in St. Louis Park to have some drinks and get to know you, hang out, and mingle. So I hope you will make us a part of your evening. You can do that by calling 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855. You can also email me at dave@darknessradio.com, and I will email you the invitation. We have some great giveaways. We're going to have a lot of fun. We have some contests, and you might even get a chance to win a set of autographs from the Ghost Hunters, Jason and Grant, and a set of autographs from Zach, Nick, and Aaron from Ghost Adventures by participating in the event that night. So call right now, 651-989-5855.
Why do you keep doing this?
I want them to have the world.
First you mentioned...
The world is not enough, Tim.
Well, it was a great James Bond movie as far as I know. First you mentioned there may be 2 potential screening movie passes that you may be giving out. Then now autographs?
Yes.
What?
And there might be more.
What?
I know. That's the way I work it.
You, sir, are too good to this audience.
Well... Is it too good, or are they too good to us? I don't think we've rewarded them fully enough. I think I'm going to throw this in. If you come and Tim is not in the hospital, he'll also hug every member of the cast and staff as you walk in that night. You'll get love from Timmy D himself.
Well, now you're starting to balance the scales out a little bit because that's not being good to our audience.
What? You're a cuddly fella. People like you.
I'm very furry, and people could get a haircut in their mouth and they could choke to death.
You had to take it there?
I'm sorry.
Well, give us a call, 651-989-5855 if Tim hasn't scared you off to the idea. And be a part of our live cast and show on this Friday night. We've got about 20 tickets left for 20 tickets for meeting for 2 people. So you can come in, be a part of this. We're going to go back to our guests this evening, and we're talking about the lost secrets of ancient America with Josh Reeves. Josh, before the commercial break, I threw a question at you, gave you a little time to marinate on it here. What's your input?
Well, are we still talking about the question you had about why would they cover this up, or what was the second question that you had for the break? Because I'm still operating on 2 questions here.
Oh, look at this guy, Tim. He doesn't even pay attention to me.
I know.
It's like having another wife. No, I know. I'm just teasing you, Josh. Well, with the idea of, actually, I'll tell you what. We have about 10 minutes left. I'll let you take it in any direction you want to go right now, because I know we got a lot to cram in the next 10 minutes, and I don't want to take up your time with just my silliness. So feel free to fire away and just talk to us about the importance of the documentary, and what are some of the other things that kind of knocked you down, blew you away, and you think that the audience is really going to love.
I think what the audience is really going to love is really how these various sites, as I mentioned earlier, tie in with people that weren't supposed to be here. As the caller mentioned earlier, this idea that we're told that Columbus discovered America, and then before that, Leif Erikson and all that stuff, and I think even the connection to the Viking thing has been kind of a misnomer and a mistake. There is evidence from the Cherokee people in the United States that these ancient Phoenicians came in boats across waterways to ancient America and seeded them with culture, and Phoenician artifacts have been found all over the United States. One particular artifact I talk about in the film is a conch shell that was found in Spiral Mounds in Oklahoma that I visited, where they also found a skeleton of an armored red-haired giant buried near there. They found a conch shell with a serpent swastika with a Maltese cross in the middle of it. That it really has the swastika did not originate with the Nazis. It originated with the with the Phoenicians.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that when you see ancient Native American artwork, you see the swastika there as well, and that's where this indication that the Native Americans were seeded by these ancient Middle Eastern Phoenicians, Amorites, comes to light. And that was one of the mind-blowing things to me, is when you see how the traditions carried on the religious traditions that the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about, the Egyptian Book of the Dead talks about. These are mirrored in earthworks, such as the Newark earthworks found in Ohio, and also the Moundsville, Alabama site. Now, your question, I just now remembered your question before the break, so this ties in with that. But I think the hotbed really is that I've found so far. There could be more than that. Ohio, undoubtedly, the state of Ohio, as you asked earlier, is chock full of sites. The Newark earthworks specifically depict the soul's travel after death. The path that it takes through the stars after death is depicted in these sites. It's also found in the Moundsville, Alabama site, because the Moundsville, Alabama site aligns with Cygnus, with Orion, and the pyramids of Giza also align to these places as well, and they also have the same exact traditions of what the soul does after death and the travel that it takes after death in Egyptian, Tibetan, and Native American traditions. That's what's fascinating to me, and also fascinating to find out that not only do the traditions mirror this, they actually built this into the earthworks in Ohio, and they use a mathematical codice that is encoded into these earthworks that's only been found in the ancient Middle East. I mean, it's a fascinating investigation. It's not something you can really tell people about with short little sound bites, and that's why I encourage people to see the film.
Certainly, yeah. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg here for you folks. So you want to learn more, you got to watch the documentary and learn for yourself. But I mean, isn't it weird to have that all of this stuff is spreading out across, the world? Items that shouldn't be showing up in different cultures are showing up.
And that, yeah, exactly. Well, the reason that what that is described is it's isolationism versus diffusionism. And the Smithsonian Institution, which, by the way, is not a government institution, it's a privately owned institution, just like the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States is not a governmental institution. And they are steadfastly committed to the idea of isolationism, to the point where they say that cultures that were on opposite sides of the Mississippi River from each other couldn't have had contact with each other, when it's clear that they did. Diffusionism states that all of these cultures throughout the world had contact with each other, and that there was basically a knowledge that this worldwide civilization exists. And the farther you go back into antiquity, the more you find this. And to answer your question from earlier, Dave, what do they have to benefit? What would they have to benefit from covering all this stuff up? It must be aliens. And I think that sort of is relevant. I mean, it does tie into this idea that, ancient aliens, whatever you want to call them, seeded mankind and the rest of this. But really the main reason that they want to keep it covered up is because it's a very old secret. And in fact, Sir Francis Bacon knew of America. If you read Sir Francis Bacon's Atlantis, The New Atlantis by Sir Francis Bacon, he describes the New Atlantis being built on the remnants of the Atlantis of old, being what they at that time called the New World, America. Sir Francis Bacon describes skyscrapers, flying machines in the sky, everything that we see in our modern day. He describes, and he got this from information that was channeled through Dr. John Dee, who was the in-house astrologer of Queen Elizabeth, and he basically told the Queen, look, if we want to expand the British Empire, we have got to get over to this new world before anybody else does, so we can find the remnants of these ancient civilizations, build our new ones upon them to expand the British Empire.
Crazy stuff. Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, Josh, I'm curious as to, in your research for this particular documentary or this film, Is there one particular piece of evidence that to you points to us being visited from another planet? Anything that might have even been mistaken for, say, an artifact of a particular people?
I think within the rock wall itself, with the structure being a 20-mile diameter structure that has piezoelectrical properties, meaning that when a low-frequency sound wave is applied to it, it produces energy. One of the diggers that was on top of this thing started shaking violently from the engine's low-frequency sound waves. It responded to that because of the crystal makeup, and they believed this big bulldozer was going to take off and fly away. So I think, more than anything else, is the possibility, especially with the high-level energy production that this rock wall produces, that it's possible that it's some sort of launching pad or takeoff site that was built by people who were essentially marooned here thousands of years ago and had to use whatever they could use just to get off this rock and get somewhere else. I think that the evidence is there in spades, and when you look at all the other evidence that coincides with, okay, basically this couldn't have been done by humans, we didn't have this high level of knowledge at that time, yeah, I think it becomes pretty clear that somebody not from here was giving these people this knowledge and this information and also encoding it into the earthworks and the artifacts.
We have an email from one of our listeners, John from Alabama. He says, Dave, could it be that the disappearance of the Moundvillians is less mysterious and perhaps better explained as any great society in decline? Perhaps they just dispersed or became the local Native Americans, and he's just tossing his 2 cents in on that. I mean, certainly that could be it, absorbed. And, as more and more people were coming from foreign countries with their diseases, we know that they were accidentally and in some cases intentionally wiping out Native American and large parts of the civilization that was going on there. But where do you weigh in on that?
Well, I don't believe that at all. These people there's no record of their existence at all. They don't even know what the people who inhabited that area were called. All they know is that they had a distinct tradition that talked about this window that happens between October and April every year at the sunrise and sunset. You have these mound sites that are aligned to the specific, what they call portals, the Deneb portal, where at a certain time of the year, one could basically walk through a portal into basically a stargate and travel to another location. And again, nobody's going to spend 300 years building something and then leave no trace of themselves behind, especially when you look at the fact that over 300,000 artifacts were excavated from Moundsville, Alabama, from the Smithsonian Institution. But if you go to Moundsville, Alabama, like I did, you can only see maybe 1 or 2 of the real actual artifacts, and that's the case with most of these sites. Spiral Mounds in Oklahoma is the same way. If you go there, you don't see any artifacts that were excavated. You see replicas. If you want to see most of the antiquities that were excavated from sites around America, you have to go to the best museums in the world to see those.
Crazy stuff. Josh Reeves, our guest for the evening. You can check out the documentary, get more information for yourself. The Lost Secrets of Ancient America is the name of the documentary. Let's get that website out one more time.
TheGlobalReality.com.
TheGlobalReality.com. Find his insights, his radio show, his documentary, everything on that site. Josh, thanks for spending 2 hours with us here this evening,
Guys,
sir.
thanks so much for having me. It was a blast.
It's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you all for tuning in and being part of the world with us. It was a pleasure learning and listening along, and I hope you guys had as good a time as I did. Now, tonight's show is interesting. I love when we can look, on so many of the shows, Tim, we're looking all across the globe to all of these weird stories that are happening, and it always seems to be some other place.
Oh, yeah.
It's always some exotic location. Well, there's a lot of secrets and a lot of mystery that takes place right in our own backyard. And joining us tonight is Josh Reeves. He is a Dallas, Texas-based researcher, filmmaker, and a radio talk show host. Funded solely by his internet followers, Josh is on a personal quest to uncover the true ancient history and forgotten past of the Americas and the world. Josh has been broadcasting his internet radio show, The Global Reality, for nearly 6 years, and he brings a lifetime of independent research to the table. Investigations in this film include the ancient and mysterious rock wall of Rockwall, Texas, a 20-mile site buried underground that could be one of the oldest civilizations on Earth, Tim. Did you hear me? On Earth.
On Earth.
That's right. The mound builders and giants in ancient America, as well as the cultures and technology that existed farther back in antiquity than we are told, and much more. Josh is striving to bring history and archaeology to the people in a do-it-yourself fashion outside of the typical official story of academia. You can find more information about our guest and about the program that he's working with at theglobalreality.com, theglobalreality.com, and check it out. It's fascinating stuff. Josh, thank you.
Migrated from France to Canada down into the United States through Minnesota. Turns out it was just my family.
Oh,
yeah.
That was it?
Yeah. Although I got some interesting...
You are a hairy group.
We are, and I did get some interesting stuff off of Ancestry.com. So, but other than that, no.
That's it. Well, our guest tonight is Josh Reeves, and Josh is sharing his wealth of knowledge in his research doing this. Again, you can check more information on his website, theglobalreality.com. When is your radio show on, Josh?
Well, that's a good question. We're never really on at the same time. It's usually around these hours, usually around midnight to 3 a.m., something around there. But it just changes. We're going to have a relaunch of the show on the network here in the next couple of weeks, and it'll go to midnight central after that. So.
Very cool. So check it out. You can go to his website. It's theglobalreality.com. And tonight we're talking about the mysteries right here in our own backyard. Now you were starting to talk to us about this location in Texas and how this really kind of intrigued you. Let's go back to that and start to give us some of the history and the background on this.
Well, excellent. And yeah, that was the big thing that got me into it. And once I had found out about it, I just kept digging and wanted to see what I could find. And unfortunately, I started to find that there's really not a lot of information about it. So I thought it was best to go and start looking at who had done archaeological digs on this stuff already, what they had found. And so I found a gentleman by the name of John Lindsay who had conducted a dig in the late 90s at the rock wall, and started getting a lot of really important information.
So much for joining us here this evening and talking to us about kind of these secret mysteries of ancient America here.
Well, it's great to be with you guys, and I'm excited to get into talking all about this stuff with you tonight. I mean, I know that it probably sounds on the surface to some of your listeners like it doesn't have anything to do with quote-unquote paranormal stuff, but, this is one of the exciting things to talk about with all this information, because it's one of the things I really didn't count on, but there is definitely a connection there, so I'm excited.
Very cool. Yeah, and aside from doing ghost UFOs, psychic phenomena, all this, we also like to talk about these hidden cultures and unknown bits of reality that's taken place in our own backyard. And there are so many of these strange mysteries. A few years ago, we talked to a gentleman who talked to us about these pyramids that are in lakes in Wisconsin, pyramids that date back and may even predate the Mayan and Incan and Aztec pyramids. They're built the same and everything, but they're in an actual lake in Wisconsin. So when you start talking about this, you start to wonder just how much does our government know? Do historians know, but they're keeping secret, and for what purpose? So it's always intriguing when somebody is willing to come out and shine the light on this topic. What got you inspired to start researching all this really kind of interesting background on the Americas?
Well, it really started with this Rockwall phenomenon, and for those people who don't know, Rockwall, Texas is a suburb of Dallas, Texas, and it's about 20 miles east of Dallas. And so I grew up, maybe about exploring all this stuff and looking into this. And of course, years later, when I grew up and had been researching other topics, I was reading Jim Marr's book in 2004, the Rule by Secrecy book, and it mentioned this ancient and mysterious rock wall. And immediately, as soon as I heard about this, I just somehow knew there was a connection to all these things I'd experienced before. And at that point, just had dedicated myself to researching it. And it's been a culmination of almost 10 years making this film that we're talking about tonight.
Very cool. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got more with our guest, Joshua Reeves, and you can find more information on him and on his documentary at theglobalreality.com. Again, that's theglobalreality.com. Tonight, we're talking about the lost secrets of ancient America with Josh Reeves. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is Darkness Radio. I am your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. And tonight, Tim, we're investigating ancient America. There's some really weird little interesting history and backstories we just don't know about. A lot of legends, too, that you hear about that have been brushed away as nothing more than legend. Have you ever followed along on this? Is there anything that ever really kind of caught your attention as being weird that took place right here in the United States that they found recently or within the last 100 years?
As a matter of fact, yes.
What is it?
Well, it just so happens that there is a story about how Sasquatch had immigrated
20 miles away from there. My whole life lived in the area, kind of the suburbs around Rockwall, and just had various experiences as a teenager around that area and talked to many other people around this area. You know, everything from, poltergeist activity to UFO sightings. A friend of mine, when we were 16, experienced had a missing time episode where we lost 5 hours of time right near the area where this Rockwall is. Another time, years later, the same friend and I had another experience where we were hit by some sort of energy. It's the only way I can describe it, really. I don't know if it was demonic energy or what it was, but it hit us, knocked us flat on our rear ends, and just shocked us. I mean, we were in complete shock and traumatized after this. And so I've been researching, I started out when I was younger researching UFOs. Teenager, I got into JFK stuff, and then
what really interested you? What interested you, Josh, in the UFO phenomena above all?
Well, that's hard to say. I really don't know because from a very young age, literally third grade, I was researching UFOs, and I think the first thing I ever saw that really got me into was back in the 1980s. HBO had a special. I can't remember the name of it on UFOs, and it had the first time I'd ever seen first-hand accounts of people who had been abducted, the first time I'd seen actual footage. So I think from there, it was really at a young age that got me